emergency for the first time in about...
This is Jim, and
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus.
You have accessed entry 514.PP0203, certificate number 25968. Games Buddha wouldn't play.
What were the playground games that you played? Did you play marbles? Or how old are you? You're not old enough to have ever played marbles.
Yeah, I'm 108 years old. I got my Aggie and my Cat's Eye, but Tom Sawyer took my Steely. We didn't play Jacks.
No.
We played, when there's a teacher, you have to play Duck, Duck, Goose or, some organized game.
Right.
We'd play Red Rover. You don't need any equipment for that. You just need to tear through and break each other's arms.
Were you able to jump rope?
Yeah.
Have you ever done like double dutch? Have you ever done jump rope with other kids manning the rope?
No, I was always kind of amazed when the girls would do that. Like I can jump rope myself, like Rocky Balboa style, but I'm like not sure about
the one where there are two girls swinging the ropes and three girls jumping in the middle.
And they're saying a very complicated rhyme about the number of kitty cats or whatever.
No, I watch those things in amazement. I'll actually watch YouTube videos of kids jumping rope.
And the girls would often do some kind of very complicated patty cake pattern.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Clapping games. Is there a name for that kind of game?
Yeah, patty cake clapping games, famously.
And so, clearly they were light years ahead of us because we were just playing soccer.
Right, and poorly.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I couldn't even really hang with the soccer.
A version of soccer where just all the kids kind of orbit the ball at all times. And I would just play defense because, I would have to run less.
A lot of those, jacks and marbles and ultimately dice, I always admired the idea of that kind of sport.
You have to bring equipment.
I was a little bit too, clearly, even though as the senior resident here at Omnibus HQ, not quite old enough to have played marbles, but my dad played marbles, and it just seemed so cool. You show up with your bag of marbles, and it ends up being it's kind of a war game. It's a gambling game.
Yeah, you get to keep your proceeds.
Yeah, it's like drag racing for pink slips.
That was briefly popular at my elementary school, but with spinning tops that you would use a piece of yarn to attack your opponent's top with. There was like a 6-month period where those were everywhere, and you would keep the top if you won, marble style.
Wow.
I think.
Briefly, I went through in the 1970s, went through a phase where I was really into kites, and I always longed for the opportunity to get into a kite fight with some other. Like I even fantasized about there. Does
that exist?
Yeah,
where you put razor stuff on the wire.
And I imagined that there would be some bully who would show up with his kite, and I would have my kite, and we would get into like a showdown where somehow I would be saving the other kids.
What could be tougher or more aggressive than flying a kite? You can see how this lends itself to combat.
Well, for sure. And I mean, the way that kites fly, it's not like he could be on the other side of the field because the wind is blowing in one direction, and you both have to be, so you have to be
you have to be right next to them if your kites are right next to them.
Or sort of next to one another, close enough to one another, and then your kites are kind of fighting up there in the sky. But I never did meet a bully that had a kite that was ready to take me on.
Well, sure. Your bully not only has to own a kite, but have it there.
and want to fight.
And the weather has to be good. You can't just fly a kite anytime.
I feel like there probably were bullies with kites, but they showed up at the park and they saw my prowess and they were like, I'll live to fight another day.
Sure.
And they slunk off and put their kite on the back of their bike and rode off.
The only winning move is not to play.
Exactly.
We sometimes played that 4-square game, but now I can't remember the rules. But the playgrounds always have markings for it. You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Just like a square divided into 4 quarters, and there's a ball bouncing between them.
So we did play 4-square, and 4-square has pretty complicated rules, and it was, I mean, not so complicated that a bunch of dumb kids can't play it, but
I'm not sure why I don't remember the rules.
so you have to serve underhand, right? There's a square, like it goes in a circle.
Yeah.
There's a
Clockwise, I think?
Yeah, there's a king or queen square, and the ball, you have to hit underhand. Did I say that? It bounces only once in your square, and then you hit it into the next square. And then, it can go out. I mean, it's volleyball in the upside down.
You know what I've thought of putting in the omnibus before is tetherball. Does tetherball still exist? I feel like when I'm on school playgrounds now, there's no tetherball.
We played tetherball too. I think tetherball really hit its biggest moment at the end of Napoleon Dynamite, where and also that kind of discredited tetherball.
Oh, is tetherball in Napoleon Dynamite?
Yeah,
but it's all 80s nostalgia. I mean, that's 20 years after the actual cultural acme of tetherball.
Right.
Was that a tetherball revival?
We played tetherball, but I think tetherball is a sport where it's just so tempting to to use the tetherball incorrectly and to make it into an agent of, I guess
try to hit the other person in the head instead of around the pole.
But it is kind of a war game. Tetherball is also kind of a war game. But the game that really intrigued me and intrigues me to this day is hopscotch.
You were intrigued by hopscotch?
Well, I was intrigued by it because it's another one of these things like Foursquare that's painted on the cement at mid-century suburban elementary schools. Yeah. And it seems, it has a very clear structure. It kind of looks like it's painted in a form that looks like a totem pole or
there's
like
numbers. So it seems like there must be order and rules.
And it involves hopping
and scotching,
presumably. And I remember as a kid watching people play hopscotch. Foursquare seemed like a game that boys and girls played with each other. Hopscotch, like jump rope, what felt like a gendered game, right?
Sad. What an unenlightened time we grew up in.
It was a girls' game, hopscotch, and as such, kind of like doing cat's cradle, I watched with fascination. I wanted to play cat's cradle. I wanted to do it with the yarn, and I was never invited to, and I never found a way to overcome my own fear. Kind of like kissing. I also was never invited to kiss anybody and never overcame my fear.
To this day.
Until I was in my 40s.
What would you like to do first? Would you like to play cat's cradle or would you like to kiss a girl?
I'm not sure which comes first. If you play cat's cradle,
it depends on the culture.
It will end up kissing. I'm almost certain. If I started playing cat's cradle with a girl now, I bet you we would end up kissing. But also, if I started kissing a girl, not that I have done this, but I wonder if we wouldn't end up playing cat's cradle
eventually. Cat's cradle and chill.
Doesn't it kind of follow?
Did you have this
very intimate game?
Did you have the same experience as me watching hopscotch, where you're trying to reverse engineer the rules?
Yeah.
Because we wouldn't even we were at an age where we wouldn't even talk to girls and be like, "Hey, how do you play that?" I would just sit and be like, "Wait, what? How do you? What are they trying to do?
So
what's success? How do you win hopscotch?
How do you win? Right? And what it appeared, how it appeared, is that you threw a little rock or a bag or a marble or a handbag or I don't know, half a sandwich.
Usually a pebble in my experience.
Yeah, threw it onto the court, and then you hop on your hoppers or feet down the length of it.
We call them.
And then you turn around and you come back and you pick up the stone, and then you go to the end, and then you throw the stone again, and then you hop on your hoppers, pick up the stone, and it seems to go on forever. And I didn't understand how it was scored or whether there were winners or losers.
There's another girl standing by with a scoreboard, keeping very careful notes of each play.
It didn't
That's
appear
a 5-4-3.
It didn't appear that anybody ever like there were no high fives associated with it. I think you get out if you step on a line, right? Or if you miss.
And aren't you trying to
some pattern.
not hop on the space with the pebble?
You don't hop on the space with the pebble, but that seems really easy not to do.
It seems too easy.
Yeah.
I felt like it should be cumulative. Like at some point, maybe there should be a second pebble, and you would have to miss 2 at that point. I was kind of trying to reverse engineer how I would do hopscotch.
Yeah, how does it escalate, right? Like and it appears.
Where's the arc?
It appears
Where's
not
the
to.
drama?
Also, when I was young, I found it very easy to hop. The game would be more challenging to me now just because the nature of hopping.
Just what it would do to your vertebrae every time.
Yeah, I weigh 1,000 pounds, and it's like watching a rhinoceros hop. But when I was a kid, when I was 8 years old, I could hop all day.
Kids can just hop.
And so I've done some research into the rules of hopscotch.
For today, or just idly over the intervening decades?
Well, it may not surprise you to learn that the other day I was on a playground. It
does surprise me. Did the restraining order ended?
It's still the waning days of the COVID epidemic. And so playgrounds, it's still unclear exactly what the protocols are. When you have a child and the child wants to go to the playground and there are other children there, what do we do now? We're in this weird middle ground where it's like, it's kind of fine, I guess. We're all vaccinated, but at the same time, we're still really performing that we don't.
Right. We know outdoor is safe, but what if there's somebody there who hasn't got that memo?
Yeah.
You don't want to tick them off.
And we're all wearing masks still, even like at things where there's absolutely zero chance. Even if we all had COVID, there would be zero chance of any of us giving it to one another.
When it was very clear what the right behavior was, say 6 months ago, then you could only get mad at one kind of person, the person doing it wrong.
Right.
But now that it's not unclear what the right etiquette is in any situation, it's just a boom time, because now you can get mad at anyone.
Right.
It's fantastic.
Why am I mad at you? I was at a swimming pool, an outdoor swimming pool the other day, and all the parents were around the swimming pool, all wearing masks, while our kids were down in a pool basically spitting on each
Unvaccinated.
other. Yeah. Unvaccinated kids just like breathing swimming pool water on one another. But we're all up here, very studiously staying 15 feet apart. And you really do wonder, like, what's next?
What's our exit strategy here?
What is the exit strategy?
I just want to lick a tetherball pole. Is that so wrong?
On July 4th, do we just all just jump into a jello pit with each other and declare it over? Or, well, so I'm on the playground and I find myself staring at the hopscotch field of play, and wondering, okay, I'm in my 50s. I've seen hopscotch my entire life. I still have no idea how this game is played, why it is ubiquitous. And so I ask my daughter, how do you play hopscotch? And she, of course, knows and begins to explain it to me. And as she explains it, it sounds like the rules of a game that she's making up as she goes. Because she does that all the time. She's like, oh, I totally know how to play football. See, you take the whim jam and you run it over here and you put it up it's like, sweetie.
Well, that's how kids play. And then the pirates see the spaceship.
So she's talking about it, and she's like, you throw it and then you have to hop and pick it up. And as she's demonstrating it, she's stepping on lines right and left. I mean, if she were in competitive hopscotch, she wouldn't be on the national team.
There was like one of those computerized tennis umpires.
Yeah.
It would be like fault.
And I would be the same way. I mean, just to make it down to one end and back, I was already like out of breath. I don't want to do this anymore.
Got a hand on each knee.
But as she explained it, it seemed impossibly simple and pointless.
I think this is the difference between young schoolyard male culture and young schoolyard female culture, and maybe this is just society writ large, is ours is competitive. You're trying to figure out how to win. Theirs is collaborative. They just want to throw a pebble and go back and forth together.
that what they really want to do is talk.
Right.
And so all these games are just about talking and singing. Whereas,
But jump rope's very confusing because you can't talk while you're doing a rhyme about, Miss McGillicuddy. Or
yeah, but
whatever.
all those rhymes are just ways to put other people in their place. Whereas, the boys don't want to talk or sing or share our experiences at all. We would just want to hit.
That's what soccer is for.
Hit and hurt. So I started to do some research on hopscotch because how is it that, something could be literally underfoot all these decades and still be so inscrutable?
There's one on a sidewalk in our neighborhood, by the way. I walk by it all the time. Some neighbor has just kind of put a hopscotch court, field,
Yeah.
pieced. I don't know what it is on the sidewalk.
I'm surprised in your neighborhood that there hasn't been that there hasn't been a big thread on Nextdoor about how dare they.
I think it predates most of the NIMBYs in the neighborhood. I think it's some old school thing, but also my daughter told me some very sad story about it. Like a teacher at their school used to live there, and then someone lost a boyfriend in a mountaineering accident or something. So now there's neighborhood lore about the ghosts of the hopscotch. What is it?
Pitch. Yeah, pitch. Let's call it a
hopscotch pitch.
No, I think it's a court. Hopscotch court.
It just seems too small to be a court.
Well, I think that's the official name, a hopscotch court.
A run, a hopscotch board.
I will go
It's
with
bigger than a board, but smaller than a court.
I'll go with pieced, but if we don't make that canon right now, I'm afraid it's court.
I'll say court, but I'm skeptical. It's got to be the smallest court imaginable. Like if you go any smaller than that, it's like you're playing Monopoly on a court. It's just not that big.
If you had a landscape architecture at your house, which you do, although I'm being generous, how many paver stones arranged in a geometric pattern would there have to be for you to call it a court? It's down there in our courtyard.
Not every patio is a court.
Yeah, but yours particularly. When you come up the front stairs, when you're walking up to the house, you've got that little area there that's kind of like
it's
too
circular,
small to be a yard, too big to be would you call that? Is that big enough to be a court?
I don't have a name for that either.
Yeah,
and I never thought of it, but now it's bothering me.
Yeah, it's down there. It's part of what you're representing to people visiting your home.
It's a court? Well, I don't know if it's a court.
Well, a hopscotch court is called a court. And
okay.
And the thing, here's the thing.
Hopscourt.
You're picturing one where the squares are about 12 inches, 16 inches square?
Yeah, they're small.
But you can make a hopscotch court as big or small as you like. I mean, you could probably do a hopscotch court where you made it big enough for your fingers.
To challenge the expert level hopper?
Oh, I guess it does have to be small enough that a person could reasonably hop from one square to the
Maybe
next.
A kangaroo could have an infinitely large hopscotch court.
But a kangaroo can't hop infinitely far.
Okay, you're right.
Yeah. Anyway, in researching it, it appears to be just as simple and dumb as we always imagined.
There's no rules.
You throw a marker. And the marker can be a coin.
Is there a shuffleboard aspect where you're trying to throw the marker on a particular easier square? Like the ones where it's two abreast, those are easier to go around than one of the one abreast parts? Do you understand the nature of my question?
I do. And the strategy of the game over the course of the whole arc of the game.
There's an arc.
There's an arc because the game, it's not just go down and back. It's, then you hand off and the next person goes down and back. And I don't see how you can make it more challenging or honestly less challenging. You hop down, you avoid the square that has the lucky bean in it. And then you get down to the end.
Do you switch legs?
I
feel like I might have seen people switch legs at the end. No?
You start on a leg and then you have to stay on that leg unless you get to the double wide ones where you widen out.
Oh, there you hit both legs, right?
Yeah. And then, maybe you switch on the far end. I mean, having done research, I am no more enlightened. It's not just how the game is played, but why the game is played.
Think of the thousands of people painting these on asphalt everywhere in America without even a sense of how to do it.
Well, here's the thing that was even more confusing to me. Hopscotch is ancient, prehistoric.
Really?
It goes back to prehistoric India.
Is tetherball prehistoric?
Well, you would have had the ability to mount a ball on a pole.
The Aztecs probably had that.
But this is
big ball of rubber, big ball of latex.
Well, but did they ever put a ball of latex on a rope on a pole? They had a ball. They had poles. They had ropes. They had balls.
Oh, they sure did.
But it's the combination. It's the combination of the three things.
But that's just the idea. That's just a young Aztec boy sitting upright in the dead of night, saying, "Wait a second."
Well, but that's what they said about the wheeled cart too.
I guess.
I mean, there were wheels for many centuries before anyone used it as a means of transportation. It was a means of.
They played roulette.
It was making pots. The original wheel was for pottery, and then somebody turned it on end and was like, "Watch me! Hey, look at me!" So hopscotch goes back to prehistory, one of the oldest games, and so
crazy.
The fascination of this, carve some lines in the dirt, throw a rock down, and then hop on one foot,
but not where the rock is.
Don't touch the rock. Don't touch the square with the rock in it. Then get to the end, turn around, and come back and grab the rock on your way back, and then do it again. Throw the rock down again.
The funny thing is, someone invented it. Somebody 12,000 years ago left the cave and did this.
Showed it to their friends.
Somehow
their friends were like, "Oh, dude, I know I can do this.
This changes everything."
And then it was it became like well, as we'll see, a massive distraction.
Some other settlement has to see it and be like, "Hey, we got some time after the crops are in. Did you see what they're doing over by the river?" Like, it has to spread.
It has to spread, and it has to, like most games are.
It doesn't seem so obvious to me that everybody just came up with hopscotch one day, right?
No. You're right. It had to start somewhere.
Mr. Hopscotch.
With one genius.
Right. Unknown genius.
Most games are analogs or are metaphors for either a race or a battle.
Yes.
And
Monopoly or chess.
And
I guess Monopoly's not a race, but kind of.
It's kind of a race. It's round the kitchen cock-a-doodle-doodle-doo.
Candyland or chess.
But the people that saw hopscotch for the first time as strangers, as travelers who came to your village and were like, "What are you guys doing?" "Oh, we're playing hopscotch." "Well, explain it to me." And then felt like, "Oh, this analogy speaks to me, because if we can resolve this dispute on the hopscotch court, we maybe won't have to."
What is the analogy?
Take to the battlefield.
What is the analogy though? Is it just a demonstration of personal agility, like the Spartans doing calisthenics or whatever?
Yeah, but agility, but there's the element of the hunt, maybe. I mean, you have to you have to go out and
I guess you do have to grab a thing.
Yeah, you not step on the landmine and then come back and grab the landmine.
First, it's a predator. You have to avoid the predator on your way out. Then on your way back, it becomes the prey.
That's right. You're the predator. It's a transformation game.
It's life. At the end of the thing is the coming of age ceremony, where you're an adult.
You become the werewolf,
and then you're the master of the court.
So it really resonated enough that it became as one of the ancient games. It's very early attested to. You find hopscotch courts in ancient Rome. You find them in ancient Persia.
That's crazy.
We've called it hopscotch since the 15th century.
What's the Scotch doing there?
Scotch, in this sense, means like a mark, like a scratch. you would naturally assume that it was a reference to the Scotch people, the Scottish people, but in fact, in Scotland, the game is known as Peevers, Peeverells, and Pabbits.
Are you kidding me?
I'm afraid not. Peevers, Peeverells, and Pabbits, and what's hilarious is that that's the longest name of all of the 100,000 names. You know, in India, it's called Stapu.
Yeah, the Scots are thrifty. They should be. I know it in Spanish.
What is it?
Rayuela.
Rayuela.
And I know that because there's a pretty famous Julio Cortázar novel called Hopscotch, where the gimmick is you can either read all the chapters in order, or you can hopscotch through them in a second order, actually avoiding certain expendable squares and get a different narrative. It's a little bit cooler than it sounds.
Rayuela. I can't roll my R's. Rayuela. There are other names in Spanish also. Galosa, Caranca. In French, it's Marel. In Turkey, it's Seksek. But in Scotland, it's Peevers, Peeverells, and Pabbits. Oh, they're lovely.
That sounds like it should be it sounds like something you would eat in Scotland. Do you want some Peeverells with your Pabbits and Pabbits?
And I think Peever is the name of the little stone.
You threw a peaver on the paver?
You threw a peaver on the paver. That's right. And there are a lot of rules about the marker. Like you can't, when you throw the marker, it can't slide into its spot. It has to land. It can't.
Oh, so the throwing is part of the game.
The throwing is part of the game.
What happens if you do it bad? You lose your turn. It's Susie's turn.
I think you are summarily executed in most cultures. That's what makes this a high stakes game.
We're not playing Aztec hopscotch here. We had a much more chill version in my school.
But what I discovered, and I think what surprised me the most, in researching hopscotch was that as part of its ancient lineage, it appeared very early on in a list that Buddha made or was made on Buddha's behalf. Buddha probably wasn't in the business of making lists. Buddha probably spent a lot of time sitting and speaking lists aloud, and someone else wrote them down.
Well, plus his thinking would not have been so bound and linear, right? Surely he's trying to rid himself of attachments to that kind of constrictive order and to expand his mind.
It's interesting when you, and I should stipulate right now that you and I are not
Buddhist
or experts in Buddhism. And I'm sure that there are a lot of Buddhist listeners to the program, a lot of futurelings who are...
well, everyone in the future will be a Buddhist.
Buddha adjacent. I wonder if you can be an expert at Buddhism. That seems opposite. So many things seem opposite of Buddhism, including the idea of...
including everything in my life.
Being opposite of Buddhism.
I wonder if everyone listening to this in the future is living in the Western paradise of the Amitabha Buddha.
Huh.
Where they've all sprung out of lotus flowers in a perfect landscape of light and harmony.
Somehow they would still...
enjoy podcasts.
And in this one in particular. So they can't have like completely transcended the grasping world.
Well, like maybe our podcast is found in that plane as well. Maybe it's part of the enlightenment they seek.
Yeah, that's true. There's
historical perspective.
There's not a ton of acquisitiveness to this show or of holding on. We're not grasping and clinging, are we?
Very few conceptions of heaven or paradise have entertainment. People are always just lounging and...
playing the lyre.
There's music.
Music.
That's true. There is music. And there's...
breakdancing.
Sometimes there's dance. Sometimes the angels, move in the rotation of the spheres.
They're dancing on the head of a pin. That's one of the number one things that angels do.
But there's never like a play. Nobody ever puts on a series of one acts.
I see what you're saying. Nobody's working on the great heaven novel.
Mark Twain is in It's a Wonderful Life. Clarence says that Mark Twain's working on a new novel in heaven.
Uh-huh.
But that seems like mostly a 20th century idea that you'd want to have your shows up there.
Kind of seems like hell.
If you have to work on a novel.
Yeah. I mean, nobody works on a novel because it's like their dream.
Maybe it comes easier up there.
Well, Buddha, in trying to describe the process to people who were, one of the most difficult things about being Buddha, I think, was explaining enlightenment to people
Because you're surrounded by all these dumb Kevins.
Yeah, it's very hard to explain non-attachment. I think it's a lot easier now because there's a whole shelf at Barnes and Noble just about explaining it to rich Americans. But
even the language of Buddhism today seems challenging to my Western mind, and I don't know if that's because it's challenging to everybody's natural thought processes, or if it's because I was raised in an American culture, or if it's because I'm living 2,500 years after these ideas were vernacular that made sense to people.
I think it was probably, I mean, I try and put myself in the Buddhist shoes a lot. And I think one of the hardest things would have been to describe it first to the first people who are like, what's going on? Don't you want, like, get up, come on, like, come with us. We're going to go.
No.
There's this killer real estate deal.
I just had an idea.
Get you into.
I was under this tree and I had an idea.
Yeah, that's not what I'm all about anymore. And it's like, what do you mean? How can you not be about this killer real estate deal? It's like, well, let me explain. Even by explaining, I'm kind of like going outside of my. You're right.
I said
here.
Buddha wouldn't make lists, but of course he did.
Yeah.
He had 4 noble truths and an 8-fold path. He was Mr. PowerPoint.
That's right. And a lot of that was like a lot of religious doctrine. There's doctrine that is meant for the laity, but there's a lot more doctrine meant for people who are clergy or trying to be clergy, trying to be monks. If you think about all the writing, all the Catholic writing, so much of it is internal documents. And as a lay person, you're not expected to follow all of the prescriptions.
You don't care what the Franciscans do.
That's right. But they care what they do.
Sure.
But Buddha made a lot of lists and made a lot of suggestions. And the way Buddha often framed it, or the way it's framed in Buddhist language, is not that he said, here are the things you cannot do, but rather he would frame it as, here are the things I wouldn't do. With the implication being...
And you shouldn't either.
If you want to follow the path, here's what I'm trying not to do. Of course, you're going to probably try not to do it too. And that's another kind of difficulty. It's a translation difficulty, not from language, but a translation of, like, I had this incredibly powerful personal revelation.
It probably transcended language, and I'm now trying to use words.
Right. And now I'm trying to use words, and I'm trying to guide you to follow a thing which is intensely, at least for me, intensely personal. But Buddha made a list of games he wouldn't play.
What? Now, the implication of this list, the fact that it's easier to list the games he wouldn't play than he would play, is that he would still play most games, surely. Or he would have made a list of the games he would play, a shorter one.
Well, what we'll find is that he made a list of categories of games he wouldn't play. But reading it, I was intrigued to try and imagine what are some games that wouldn't fall into these categories.
Oh, are the categories so sweeping that it kind of... Because really, it would have been very easy for him to say, check it out, the Buddha doesn't play games. Buddha's not playing.
Buddha doesn't play like that.
Buddha don't play.
Right. Well, let's take a look at some of the games that Buddha wouldn't play. And maybe we can...
What if I say a game, and you tell me if you think Buddha would play it based on his categories?
Okay, let's try this. Throw out a game.
Well, would the Buddha play soccer, for example?
Buddha, in the list of games that he would not play, the number 3 on his list, games of marking diagrams on the floor such that a player can only walk on certain places.
Well, that's hopscotch.
That's hopscotch. And is a direct reference to hopscotch. But also soccer is...
Sure.
Games on the floor.
And any sport will have inbounds and out of bounds. So,
but more to the point, category 7, ball games.
Oh, well, so all ball games are out.
All ball games are out.
Okay. What about Candyland?
So Candyland. Oh
wait. I was about to say I I was trying to say a dice game. Like, or what about Clue? Are dice games okay?
Category 5, games of throwing dice.
Oh, so dice are out.
Dice are out.
Well, then Canyonland's interesting because the dice mechanism is a series of colored cards.
And that is kind of covered because it was recognized that dice take different forms, and dice can be cards or knuckle bones. I mean, anything that performs the role of dice.
You think so? Anything, any randomizing device
is qualifies as dice.
Is out.
Yeah.
What about Zelda? Can you play like video games?
There actually is a discussion online
among Buddhists,
among maybe among like Buddha adjacent, people that are inquiring minds want to know whether there are modern games Buddha couldn't have anticipated that somehow Buddha would allow for. But I think the overall point of this list of games Buddha wouldn't play, the overall point was that Buddha did not want the mind to be distracted by notions of winning, of triumph. These are...
I feel like at that point he just needs to say, Buddha says don't play games.
Don't play games. Let me read you the list of categories, and we'll see if there are games that don't fit these categories that maybe would be, that Buddha would like delight in.
Okay.
Because I don't want to imagine Buddha playing a game kind of like, okay, it's not on the list. Fine. All right. You can play this game.
Like this is me every time my kids want to play the game of life or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Where you're like, all right, technically I did say that I would play this with you later, and it is technically later. So yes, all right. No, if Buddha's going to play a game, I want to imagine that Buddha is having a blast.
Sure. Yeah. Because think of all the things he could be doing with his time.
Right. Okay, so the first category of games that Buddha wouldn't play, category 1, games on boards.
Wow.
But specifically, games on boards where the boards have 8 or 10 rows.
Chess or checkers.
Now, this prohibition predates the game of chess.
Oh, so chess was played on a similarly sized board that older games were played on.
And the older games, there were games popular at the time. One of them was Ashtapada, which is kind of a precursor to chess, and Chaturanga and Desapada. These were all games played on what we come to think of as chessboards. But rather than being war games, they were, and the pieces of these games actually look like chess pieces. There's a king, there's a knight. Instead of a bishop, there's an elephant. And I think that maybe a castle.
I feel like the Church of England should consider that change. Instead of a bishop, an elephant. Can
you imagine if every cathedral had an elephant instead of a bishop?
Oh man,
I would join that religion.
I would be at mass every Sunday.
What the heck are we doing? There's no reason we couldn't start this religion.
I mean, it's not super maybe good to the elephant.
Oh, right.
Like even no matter how humane you are, it still has to live in a cathedral.
Right.
Which presumably it would
good
not
point.
want to
Good
do.
point. All right. Well, let's table that for a minute. Although that's problematic because tabletop games are not permitted. Oh. But the chessboard and the chess pieces, instead of going at one another in head-to-head combat, they actually moved in a circle around the board. So it was a chase game.
So it's not collaborative. You're still playing against someone.
And in fact, you could play. There were four people on the board.
Everybody gets a corner,
and you get a corner, and then you move your pieces in a circle around the central hub. These are the kind of the games that preceded chess.
This is probably what futurelings are going to do. They find a chessboard in the rubble, and they're probably playing it like this.
They're like, "Whoa, how do you do this?
That's not right."
Okay, all right. Everybody starts in the middle, and then we try to get to the side. It's like my daughter trying to describe hopscotch.
Exactly.
So those games were right out.
Okay.
Games on boards with 8 to 10 rows, pre-chess. But category 2, the same games, but played on imaginary boards.
Oh, like when was that a thing then?
So there's reference to the Ashtapada, the chess game, the pre-chess game. There were references to Ashtapadam played in the sky, which the assumption is that it's like playing blindfold chess.
Right, because you do see people in movies play King's Pawn to Knight 7 or whatever, and they'll just talk back and forth, and they're imagining the board. So
blindfold chess, where people are imagining the board, goes back centuries.
Huh.
And in the during the kind of Enlightenment period, but certainly in the 18th, 19th century, people playing blindfold chess against multiple opponents this was kind of like one of the signals of genius, that you could sit in a chair and play against other people who had a chessboard in front of them, and you were just kind of imagining the game. And that was such a...
Oh, yeah, I guess for an audience, you don't want it to be imaginary. You want there to be a board, but the guy's blindfolded.
So he's blindfolded.
The genius can't see it.
And it became such a sign and symbol of genius that that the USSR actually tried to ban blindfold chess because it said it was breaking people's minds. And it still exists now as, it's not like I hesitate to call it like a parlor show, but in 2016, a man by the name of Timur Gariev played 48 different people. This is in 2016, while sitting on an exercise bike. And he won 35 of the games, 7 draws and 6 losses. He
has to remember the position of every board.
Of 48 different chess games.
Does he need the bike?
He's on the bike for some reason. I don't know why. Because he's trying to get a second Guinness World Record.
I was about to say, the Guinness record is most blindfold chess games completed while on a bike.
So it remains a thing, playing blindfold chess.
It's just hard to believe. Even somebody doing one game, I'd be like, but how does he know where the knight was? Much less on 48 boards at once.
Yeah, I
wonder if he has to try, or if there's just a different flavor to each game. He's like, oh, no, this is clearly the one that felt like this last time,
Yeah, you wonder whether it is that, whether he's playing it more as a poem.
Or does he have to construct, all right, I need to remember game 16 has, I'm doing this opening or whatever.
Well, this was the conceit of that recent television show with the redheaded lady.
Oh, Queen's Gambit.
She
plays in the ceiling.
And
that's literally Buddha's playing in the sky.
Yeah, there are blindfold chess people who describe visualizing the board in that way. Huh. And one of the more famous stories was, one of the early kind of people that could play multiple people described it as something that he used to put himself to sleep at night, lay in bed and look at the ceiling and picture a chess game. So the Queen's Gambit is, that plot point was derived from...
If you have a chess brain, you're
chess
like,
brain.
Oh yeah, she's doing the thing.
But as we've learned about neuroatypicality nowadays, the kind of understanding that like, I have an inner voice, a lot of people don't, but I cannot sit here and visualize a rose. I can only visualize a description of a rose, and other people can see a rose quite perfectly in their minds.
Is this an example, or are you confessing that you cannot picture a rose? Right?
Well, can you picture a rose?
I think so. My rose is pretty good.
You can see it rather than see an understanding of it.
Yeah, I feel like I'm seeing the image of it.
Yeah, and
I know where all the petals are located. It's pretty spatial.
That is not a thing that I knew I didn't have until very recently. When I sit down to draw something, I put the pencil on the page and start moving the pencil until it starts to look like the thing I'm trying to draw. Oh. I don't visualize it and then draw from an image. I just watch the lead until it looks like what I'm trying to make.
That would go a long way to explaining which kids in a class are, what the teacher would say, good at drawing or not.
Right. And I was always considered good at drawing, but it was not, I wasn't seeing it. And realizing this and talking to people that I know who are artists who are like, no, I close my eyes and I see it.
Yeah.
I see a perfect.
It's right there. Like I thought you were making it up when you said that.
No.
I thought you were reading about some weird person who had his corpus callosum cut and now he couldn't see a rose anymore. But you're that weird person.
And the thing is, I discovered this because of all those conversations we've been having in the last year about the fact that because I have such a loud inner voice, one that is talking to me all the time conversationally, and that I'm talking to all the time conversationally.
Is it your voice? Whose voice is it?
Well, there are multiple voices.
Oh, I've heard about this.
But they're not, but I don't think that they are, it's not schizophrenic, right? I'm not wondering where the voice is coming from. I know who they all are. And most of them are a real pain in the ass. They're in there. They've got a lot of opinions, and I feel like they need to be quiet.
Do they have cool nicknames?
They need to listen to Daddy. Yes, they're not cool nicknames because I'm not a namer. I know so many people who name everything, and it's very natural to them to say like, "Oh, my car, Brenda," and I name things just according to their color. Like that's the green one, and that's the green truck, and
it's very Buddha of you.
Yeah,
he wouldn't name his car.
But in trying to describe to other people all the different conversations I'm having in my head and realizing there are so many people that don't do that at all. In fact, do not talk at all to themselves.
It's blissfully quiet in here right now.
But they do see beautiful roses. And I'm like, when I close my eyes, all I see is static. It's like the neutrons from the creation of the universe.
They're at one end of a spectrum where they're extremely visual.
Yeah.
And as a musician, you're at a spectrum where you're extremely auditory.
Yeah, maybe. Right? Well, I'm not sure. This is the stuff, we haven't investigated this enough, but I know for one thing, I cannot play 48 games of simultaneous chess blindfolded while on an exercise bike. I think just being on the exercise bike would be enough of a challenge for me.
It seems like the Buddha is anticipating future objections to his rules. Because after he's like, no board games, then he's like, and you can't do a board game where the board's imaginary.
That's right. Can't do it
in your mind. It's a preemptive move.
Number 3, we've already covered. Games of marking diagrams on the floor such that a player can only walk on certain places.
The Hopscotch Amendment.
And in describing it, there was a hopscotch game that was very popular in India and Nepal at the time.
That's fantastic. And he thought it was
Parahara Patham.
This is just making the Buddha seem like an old crank who's like, the kids today are playing Parihara Patham and I don't like it.
Well, but the thing is, that's the wonderful thing about it. He's not saying you can't. He's saying these are games he wouldn't play.
Got it.
Number 4, games where players either remove pieces from a pile or add pieces to it, with the loser being the one who causes the heap to shake.
So it's like Jenga.
Pickup sticks, Mikado, Kerplunk.
What's an additive one? These are all subtractive, right? Are there ones where you... Oh yeah, we have a game where you have to add, add these weird dangling components to like a Calder-like mobile. I can't remember what this game is called. And eventually it starts to tilt out of kilter and then it falls.
Well, if you think about a house of cards, I mean,
sure.
That's what it is, right? Anytime you and a friend are piling things on top of one another and the loser is the one that makes it fall. I mean, it's basically 3/4 of all the games I play. It's just that those towers are emotional.
It seems like these could be solitary games. Like he wouldn't be against... A lot of the times he's talking about winners and losers.
Right.
Like it seems like maybe he wouldn't be against me building a house of cards as a
by yourself
lonely pastime.
I don't know. You may have hit on an example of a game that Buddha would play, or at least wouldn't be against.
He never says cards specifically. Is that not one of the? I don't want to jump ahead.
Well, let's go on.
Okay.
Number 5 is games of throwing dice.
All dice are out.
Number 6. Games that involve dipping the hand with the fingers stretched out in lac. Lac, which is a kind of like a red colored
like shellac, like
resin.
Yeah, it's made from bugs.
It's made from bugs.
Beetle wings or something.
And then striking the wet colored hand on the ground or on a wall and calling out, "What shall it be?" And then showing the form required. Elephants, horses, etc.
So in this game, do you make the splotch and then people try to suggest what it is, or
yeah,
okay,
it's a kind of
I do that game where I'll do a squiggle and then I'll try to make it into a face or something.
Yeah, it's suggested that it's like a Pictionary style game.
It's Pictionary adjacent for sure. Do you think this would remove all drawing games?
Yeah, all sort of like guess what this is games. There's a lot of that in this list. They sort of guess what this is. Stuff is off limits.
Well, those kind of games must have been popular back then because they don't require equipment.
Right? You didn't need pads.
The kind of stuff you play in a long car trip. 20 questions.
Need spear.
Right.
We'll get to the 20 questions thing in a second.
Oh, right.
What I discovered about lac is that lac is, as you said, right, its ultimate form is shellac. Lac is the word for the bug and also for the product, the resin that is excreted by the bug.
Do we like it because of its color? Was it used as a dye or is it
two different versions of it? So the word lac actually comes from the Sanskrit word meaning 100,000, because the suggestion is that so many bugs are required. These are swarming bugs, and in order to make a useful amount of lac resin, you need that many bugs, or hundreds and hundreds of thousands of bugs, and so the bug is actually described by a number, lac.
That's funny because our word lac means the opposite of that. It would be the smallest possible quantity of something. If you have a lac of something, you don't have 100,000 for sure.
That's right. But in Sanskrit, if you have a lack of something, you have it in plenitude.
Man, it's just crazy how different
I know.
people
Aren't people amazing?
It's fantastic, the diversity.
So the way that you harvest lac, the insects create these resin tubes on branches of trees, and this will work on. It's not like the mulberry. These lac insects will make these tubes on a variety of different trees.
Like on the surface of it?
On the branch, that as they kind of build this tunnel of resin as they work along a branch. And the way to harvest it is that you actually cut the branch that's covered with lac resin. And that product is called stick lac.
I can see why.
It's a stick covered with lac. And if you're trying to make a dye, you leave the insect in, you harvest the stick lac with the insect in the lac, because the color of the bug determines the color of the dye.
If you just want sticky resin, it doesn't have to have the bug in it. If you want it to be red or whatever,
it's
got to have a bunch of little bug corpses in the resin.
If you have processed the stick lac so that you've just taken the resin and you've cleaned the bug parts out of it, and the way that they did that was that they would kind of get like a cheesecloth bag, and they would put the stick lac in it and then heat the bag, and the resin would melt and go through the cheesecloth, leaving the bark and the bug parts
carcasses
behind. That is called seed lac, which is the kind of processed lac. And then if you process seed lac, you get shell lac or shellac.
This is how Canadians make maple syrup also.
Oh, through a cheesecloth sock?
Yeah, they're like, "Do you want a grade A amber or with all the bug bodies?" And a Canadian would be like, "Yes, sir. Please put that on my hotcakes."
More bug bodies. Now, the list of games Buddha wouldn't play kind of varies depending on the source.
Are there different scriptural versions of this, like the Gospels?
There are, and in one of them, category 6 is games involving hitting a short stick with a long stick.
What would that even be?
Well, and that's part of why that's not on all the lists, because some people suggest it might just be a translation error. I can think of
less relevant today since there's no such games, but I guess you want to have it on the books in case that game comes back.
Hitting a short stick with a long stick is not a game that Buddha would play.
What if that becomes the hot toy of Christmas 2022? You want Buddhists to be everywhere to be vigilant about the short and the long sticks.
I do feel like as somebody looking for a get-rich-quick scheme, to go back in time and find like all the games that Buddha outlawed, some of them didn't make it. Maybe he was successful, and then bring those back into our contemporary like godless society.
I can't believe nobody's engineered a tabletop game called Buddha Would Never. And it's, there's 16 categories, and it's like, now we're going to play the shellac game. Now we're going to play the Jenga game.
So 7, we've talked about already, ball games.
All ball games. That's crazy.
Category 8, just as prevalent as Category 7, all ball games. Category 8, no blowing through toy pipes made of leaves.
Is your implication that he's doing these in order of importance? That like the ball games is less popular in his day than dipping your hand in shellac and splashing it on a wall?
Well, what's interesting now is he goes through a series of things that he doesn't want you to play with.
So these are not even games?
8, you're not supposed to play with a toy pipe made of leaves.
You're not supposed to play with yourself.
And I believe that the toy pipe is not like a smoking pipe, but rather like a pipe, like a
I was
Pied
imagining
Piper
like
pipe.
A kid blowing bubbles. Oh, I see. You're not supposed to make like when you blow through with grass, right?
Yeah.
You use the grass for the reed.
A toy pipe made of leaves.
I know how to do that.
That's what I interpreted it as, but I'm not reading it in its original Sanskrit.
So no kids tootling on reeds in the woods.
Number 9, no plowing with a toy plow.
Well, first of all, what's fun about that?
What's fun about not doing it, or what's fun about doing it?
To quote Tom Hanks in Big, what would be fun about plowing with a toy plow? Did he really have to dissuade the youth from doing? I guess if mom and dad, just much as today, you've got a toy kitchen.
Right.
If you've got a parent who's a chef, a lot of toys mimic careers.
Right. If you're on a road trip in ancient times,
if everybody is plowing all day, of course a kid would want to drag around a little plow.
If you're on a road trip and you're all riding on a plow, the kid's going to bring along a toy plow.
Yeah, do you think
that's prohibited?
Hot Wheels just made plows back then.
But I also feel like, if you were some grown people and you were sitting around and you picked up a little stick and you started making little furrows in the dirt while you were talking, and you were imagining them as furrows in a field, you hadn't meticulously crafted a toy plow. Right, you're just plowing with a little stick.
Anything that acts as a plow might anger the Buddha.
Well, that is something that he wouldn't do. It's distracting him from his other work.
It just seems like he could say things like, don't fidget.
Well, he does. He says no playing with toy windmills.
Well, see, again, that's a little more specific than don't fidget. I feel like he's leaving a lot of kinds of fidgeting out.
Don't play with toy measurements made from palm leaves. He also doesn't want you to play with windmills made from palm leaves or pipes made from palm leaves.
He's just anti-palm leaf.
The thing is, it feels more and more like palm leaves were one of the major building materials they had, at least in toy construction.
Or at least one of the more sinful ones. What do you think a toy measurement is? Is it it's being used as a standard? It's a palm leaf that's been measured to match a certain Buddhist length?
So I'm trying to imagine like playing with lengths or measures. Distracting yourself with that kind of like, is this longer than that? Toy measures would have to be about comparison.
I guess
you're making a game out of comparing, like volume or length or weight.
Here we can infer the ethical problem, which is that we should not spend all our time in comparison of outward properties.
That's right.
Which are transient.
Leave the material world of measurements and windmills and plows and pipes behind.
It seems like he should say, don't play with any object. The life of the mind is what's important. Toy windmill seems unusually specific. He probably just had one annoying disciple who was always playing a toy windmill. He's like, I've thought of a new addition to my list.
Well, he's like,
Rajiv.
Well, I took palm leaves and now I'm playing. Now it's a little cot for my little doll. Right in here somewhere, there's another one that doesn't make all the lists. Right after playing with a toy plow, but before playing with toy windmills, what I've written down as precept 9A, subset A, no somersaulting.
Oh,
which also feels like, well, I get no toy windmills, I get no toy measurements, or no toy carts, which is number 12, but no somersaulting.
And maybe by extension, no kinds of fun bodily games.
He doesn't say no skipping, for instance. He doesn't say no running around the courtyard for exercise.
Maybe it's true. A lot of these do still allow for exercise. Although back then you wouldn't need exercise but
no somersaulting. It's too whimsical. It doesn't have there's no other purpose.
Your robes fly up and you could see the Buddha's bottom.
Crucially, number 13, no playing with toy bows. So don't pretend no pretend fighting. He doesn't say no pretend sword fighting, but no toy bows.
Yeah, it's true. He would have had access to other weapons.
Combat games.
So basically,
wrestling. He doesn't prohibit wrestling.
A toy assault rifle would be fine today.
But a toy bow. So what would be the problem with a bow that he wouldn't have a problem with a sword?
Maybe
or with
it's a
wrestling?
shoot your eye out issue.
Oh,
it's the equivalent then of a BB gun that could
no BB guns
that could injure a friend or yourself.
And then in a list that has 16, and I guess in a list that has 18, there are 3 more. One of them, number 14/16.
These are not in all versions.
Not in all versions. These following 3 are in all versions.
Oh, okay.
No guessing at letters traced with the finger in the air on a friend's back.
Oh, we used to do that.
Yeah.
I did that as a kid.
Yeah, it's a
classic sitting in church game.
A natural game. You draw a little letter and the person next to you, it guesses what you're writing.
Yes.
Buddha specifically singled out this game as one to not do.
You have to wonder if maybe he just sucked at a few of these games and he was just tired of losing. So from now on, I will never play that game where I cannot guess the letter.
Well, as you just said, it's a popular game in church, and you can imagine Buddha standing up in front of a group of monks, and he's explaining, like, here is why we don't play with toy pipes made out of, and then there's a monk writing on another one's back going like, check it out. And he's writing like Buddha sucks or whatever. And Buddha's like, and also,
I just thought of it. It has just been revealed to me that there is another game.
No tracing with the finger in the air. But then the last 2, very different from one another. Number 15, no guessing at a friend's thoughts.
Was that a popular game?
Well, 20 questions.
Yeah.
What am I thinking?
I guess 20 questions is basically what am I thinking of?
It's a... in a way, it's as old as time. Like, guess what I'm thinking? And
we used to do that kind of just ESP game too, like in hopes that we'd just stumble on it. Fruit salad. And then you'd be like, wow, I must have powers.
Right.
But it never worked.
Which one of these do you like better? Guess. Buddha's like, no, don't waste your time.
Don't guess at things.
Don't waste your time
guessing. You should just tell him, and then you don't have to play the game.
Right. And then the final game that Buddha wouldn't play, imitating deformities.
Is that a game?
Well, yeah, I think it's a very popular ancient game.
I'm sure lots of impressions and imitations. That's probably one of the oldest of games. But specifically, he doesn't ban them all, just like the ableist ones.
Yeah, you can imitate your dorky headmaster, but not his limp. You cannot imitate a speech impediment or, it's no mockery, basically. Which seems like a very good and heavy game that he wouldn't play. And seems weird that he puts it on the same list as plowing with a toy plow.
Right. Like this one, you can actually see the clear ethical background, or maybe it just happens to intersect with our idea of ethics. Whereas to Buddha, it's clear, on the higher meditative plane where his mind is, it's clear why that's just as bad as the toy windmill.
Yeah. Right. That he's talking about it from a materialist standpoint. And not a...
he doesn't really care about the hurt feelings.
Yeah,
or the...
right. Although maybe he does. In reading the list of games that Buddha wouldn't play, I feel like I learned a lot about Buddha.
What do you think? What changed in your idea of Buddha now that you've seen his no-go game list?
Having confined my knowledge of Buddha, I haven't purposely confined it, but
100% statues at Chinese restaurants.
Most of the Buddha that I understand is from reading Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, not the total story of Buddha, and then
also from a German guy,
right?
It's like learning about Southern plantation music from a white songwriter in
Ohio,
in the Bowery of New York or something.
But also then trying to figure out what my college friends that all got into yoga are talking about when they talk about Buddhism. And then
it's probably this, right?
Yeah, of course, right. Like trying to figure it.
So you guys don't do Yahtzee anymore, right? No, man. No, it's got dice.
But figuring, learning that Buddha really was a list maker. And then in researching this, like the number of ecumenicals like the number of treatises that were produced in the era, Buddhist contemporary era, and then the eras that followed. There's a lot more documentation of what Buddha would and wouldn't do than I would have expected. I thought he kind of laid it out and then went back to sleep under that tree. I didn't realize that he had so many scriptures.
He was out doing the work.
There are a ton of scriptures.
Maybe some of them are apocryphal. I'm sure none of them actually date to his lifetime, just like many religious leaders.
What I didn't figure out is I didn't get any further clarity or understanding as to how or why you would play hopscotch.
He doesn't address it.
He just says, "Don't do it," but I'm still in the dark. Why do it in the first place?
He just says he wouldn't do it, which you have framed as a sign of his inner grace. But to me, it just seems petulant. Like I, Buddha, would like everyone to know I'm not doing the fault. It's like your friend who will not go to Thai food, or my kid announced yesterday that she will never get in the inflatable kayak again. Oh. And I was like, but you love the inflatable kayak. No, this is a new dogmatic rule.
It's over.
So this just makes Buddha kind of seem like a pill that he wants all his friends to know his 16 game rules.
I'm really wondering, now that I know the games that Buddha wouldn't play, in the course of walking through a typical summer, whether I'm going to catch myself like idly drawing a line in the dirt and going, oh, wait a minute, I'm playing with a toy plow. Like, am I going to catch myself playing some of these games and realize...
You'll sense some pure mind leaving you.
Yeah.
And you'll realize, of course,
wait a minute,
it was the toy plow.
It was the toy plow all along.
I'm farther than ever from enlightenment. And that concludes Games Buddha Wouldn't Play. Entry 514.PP0203. Certificate number 25968 in the omnibus. Now, Futurelings, we don't know what your dogmatic rules are regarding recreation. We hope that you're not on social media, but we were at Omnibus Project in our age. I'm at Ken Jennings. John, you can find at his Patreon if you're looking for him online. I certainly hope you're not sending email. My kids don't send email.
What?
It's over.
What? What do they do? TikTok each other?
Yeah, they just TikTok each other.
What is that even?
No, they don't make TikTok videos. They'll just text. Texting is now email and voice conversation, and
they don't email, huh? Are you ready for that? Are you ready not to email?
Well, I have something I want to forward to them, and I know if I forward this document, they will literally never see it. So I have to act it out as a TikTok, doing a couple funny voices. You know, with my two beloved TikTok characters.
Hey, you haven't done your chores. Hee hee. I was trying to put together a road trip for my family because my family wants to go on a road trip, and they've put the ball in my hands. You plan the road trip.
We want to go on a road trip but not plan one.
And so I started planning a road trip, and I realized it was too long for a series of texts, and so I put it in an email. And it was the first time that I wrote an email where I wasn't replying to someone else's email.
You'd never done it before?
Well, no,
Where's
in a
the
long
compose
time.
Button?
I forget what the last email I sat down and was like, I'm writing an email. It's usually I'm replying to an email, but this was one I actually wrote, and I have no idea whether anyone saw it.
Probably not, if they're anything like my family. Well, if emails are not on your verboten list, you can email us at the omnibusproject@gmail.com. If fan culture does not violate your list, you could you can hang out with the Futurelings on Facebook, delightful group.
They're a nice group.
If monetary donations don't violate your personal economic policies, you could support Omnibus. Patreon.com/Omnibus Project would give you access to an amazing variety of perks, ranging all the way from the humble, like a bonus show each month at the lowest support level, all the way up to making John and I come to your house and play elephant chess with you. Blindfolded elephant chess.
We're going to play blindfolded elephant chess while I'm on an exercise bike and Ken is singing the lyrics to Union Dixie.
I can do it because I can imagine where all the chess pieces are, just like I can imagine a perfect rose. John has just a cacophony of voices saying, move the rook, move the rook. And then his neighbor's dog is like, do some murders. Murder the postman.
Can you imagine playing a game of chess in your Imaginarium?
No, but, chess is a common device used in memory research.
Oh.
Because what happens is, a chess rookie like you or I trying to memorize a position on a chessboard would have to memorize where every piece is spatially.
Right.
And a good chess player would just look at the board and immediately see the positions and the strategies and the development of the game.
Right.
And so all the positions would just come automatically because they can see, oh, here's what happened in this corner. And then they can just set up the pieces because they saw the situation and not the scatter,
Right.
So the better you get at chess, the better you could do it, that kind of thing. But no, I could not do that.
No.
Hope you're not against the U.S. mail. You can mail us things to the Omnibus Project at P.O. Box 55744, Shoreline, Washington 98155. Andrew has just sent us Pokemon cards.
Those are very popular around here.
There's a huge there's a run on Pokemon cards right now. It's the Dogecoin of our time.
What? Are you serious?
Yeah, you can't get Pokemon cards for ready money. I think they became very popular during the pandemic.
Oh, so which cards did we get here from Andrew?
Andrew has a reason. I got a GameStop promo Flapple.
All right.
Because it's a 2021 confluence of... I don't understand what the two cultural relics are. One is just the shortage of Pokemon. And maybe the other is the run on GameStop stock.
Uh-huh.
The Pokemon Flapple is a grass and a dragon type, which begs the age-old question, which would you rather have, a Flapple in your apple or half a Flapple in your apple? Oh, he is kind of a worm, I see. He's a worm-like guy with an apple skin. And then he was going to send you Misty's Tears, but he didn't want to wind up on some sort of FBI list. I don't know what that means.
I don't either.
So he sent you Misty's Determination. I think because you like to talk about your waifu.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get Misty, the trainer Misty.
Well, let me see. Oh, it's a trainer card. Are they both trainer cards?
No, mine is a grass and dragon Pokemon. Mine is Flapple. GameStop promotional Flapple, no less. Flapple and Bespin Fatigues. You still can't reach that.
Come here, you.
There you go.
Okay, here we go. And a trainer card is good. This is a shiny one. Misty's Determination. Mm-hmm. Oh, I see why he didn't want to end up on an FBI list, because this is a cute little waifu here.
I guess, but would her tears be worse than her determination? I don't even know how to begin to answer that.
I'm not sure. I don't understand any of this. Futurelings, from our vantage point in your distant past, we have no idea how long our civilization survived or whether it even qualifies as a civilization.
If we can't keep our Pokemon cards stocked, how are we going to manage anything else as a culture?
I'm wondering whether on a list of games that John wouldn't play, whether Pokemon would be on the list or not. All card games. All card games are
I feel like
eliminated.
mine is all video games. I'm like the Buddha there. That's my number 5. It's not going to be like video games involving small go-karts. It would be a
all video games.
Blanket prohibition.
No games involving toy plows and no video games of any kind.
No video games with mushrooms.
That's all of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Video games are mushroom based in our era.
We hope and pray that the catastrophe we fear may never come. But if the worst comes soon, this recording, like all our recordings, may have been our final word. But if Providence allows, we hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the Omnibus.